Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 4th, 2021 edition of News from the Frontlines of Business by DW Huff Consulting. So it's Friday here. Hopefully everybody made it through their week okay. We seem to have survived it all right. And one thing I want to start doing a little bit with our weekly update is trying to, I guess, lighten things up a little bit with some, fun with numbers. So of all the numbers that have come across my desk and different news posts that I've read recently, the most fun one I saw this week is 2011. Reason why 2011 was kind of in the headline of this article that's coming to us from Russia, where in July of 2011, Russia had just I guess their version of the FDA had made a rule where beer is an alcoholic beverage. Prior to this date in 2011, anything with less than 10% alcohol content was not considered to be alcohol. So, Russians are hardcore. So anything other than straight whiskey was not an alcoholic beverage. So it was a food stuff, and I guess any kid with $1 can go buy a beer somewhere, prior to 2011. So I guess that's not the case anymore. So anyway, 2011 is my my funny number for today. So as far as business updates, a couple of things. I guess we'll kind of just jump in on the personal side because this is something we talked about a little bit last week as well. But the advanced child credit. So there's been a lot of clarification about how that's exactly going to work. The old rules were $2,000 credit was available for any child under 17 years old. Those have been expanded now. So now if the kid is younger than 6 years old, it's a $3,600 credit. If the child is between 6 and 17, it's $3,000. And they're going to actually start advancing that credit. So starting in July, they're going to start making payments. It's going to be one half of the credit, and it's going to be divided into a monthly payment. But you'll be seeing, so it's going to be based on banking information and other information from your 2020 tax return. So I guess that's another point to remember. If you have not filed 2020 yet, you need to get it in so that you can be a part of this calculation. Because what I don't know is if say you file in August or September, I don't know if you have to wait until next year's filing return, or they're going to start prorating this credit. I'm not sure how it's going to work. So to head that off, you definitely want to try and get into the system sooner rather than later. But it looks like the Treasury Department has their systems ready to go for that. There doesn't seem to be any talk of any sort of delay. So the advanced child credit is looking like it's a go. And if your kid's older than 17, you just out of luck. I have to look for some other tax saving opportunities. Entity choice. So on our small business clients, we've had this discussion a few times this week, so it's probably worth mentioning again that when you first start out, I guess the choice between whether you want to be an LLC or a corporation or just a regular sole proprietor, all these things, it sometimes gets business owners kind of confused. And if you go to certain websites, certain law firms, things that they'll give you these packages, these service packages where they'll establish an LLC or a corporation for you. And on its surface, it all sounds like a good idea, but it's not always necessary. So my general information, so everything's a little bit different, but if you are just starting out and you don't have a lot of revenue, and by a lot I'm saying less than, say, $60,000, the more complicated entities don't always make sense because the tax savings isn't really there after you factor in the extra accounting costs and things that it takes in order to stay in compliance with those more complicated rules. So, think it through, reach out to us. But, in general, if you're just starting out, you go to Secretary of State's website and wherever you live and you establish an LLC, you get your ID number and bank accounts and go ahead and operate. And as you start making more money, a lot of times you can make these elections after the fact, and sometimes retroactive, sometimes just make it going forward. But I think initially I would tend to advise you stay away from dropping a couple $1,000s on these services to establish an entity when the tax savings may not always be there. And then there could be other reasons. So definitely get some advice first. But that's just my general take there. PPP, EIDL. All COVID updates, ERTC, and all that kind of stuff. Last week, you may remember us mentioning that the PPP had kind of stopped. So, back in May, it started to kind of dwindle down, and they ran out of money in the earlier part of May. There was a little bit left that kind of lingered into the last couple weeks of May. That's now completely done. So PPP doesn't look like it's going to be replenished. There's been no talk of anything like that happening. So we think that program is pretty much finished now. So if your stuff is not already in the queue and being processed, I wouldn't expect to see any PPP funding coming your way. EIDL, so that's the Economic Impact Disaster Loan. Those are still being processed. We haven't seen, at least on round 2 of this program, we haven't seen very much in the way of disbursements. However, just to recap, there was EIDL that first came out, and that was capped at 25% of operating expenses. Now the new version goes up to 200%, so it's a much higher loan amount now. So now there's another form you got to fill out for the second round of it, and if you haven't done so, you should, just to get your name in the queue. And if you can use the money at, the interest rate is very favorable at 3.75%, so it's a good deal to get your name in the queue. And the paperwork isn't very cumbersome, so there's no reason not to get it in the system there and see what happens when it eventually gets approved. That's another thing. It's moving along very slowly, and so better to have it not need it than 2 months from now on have to try and get it back at the back of the line here. The ERTC, so that's probably another. So we haven't seen that's the Employee Retention Tax Credit, and that could be as much as $5,000 per employee as a credit. So if you qualify for this and you had people working for you, it's a $5,000 payment. So it's a very good deal. And paperwork's a little more tricky with that one. You probably, if you don't have in-house accountants, you're probably gonna need some help there. But get that one moving too. So the program's been kind of expanded recently. A lot more people qualified and did initially, even back in December. So definitely get the ball rolling there. Reach out to us if you need help, because that one is a more complicated paperwork also, because there's some requirements. So if you got PPP, certain wages aren't eligible, and it's an Excel workbook exercise there to kind of figure out what actually counts and what the actual calculation is. So consider that. And we haven't seen a whole lot of disbursements yet, so I think that's another program that they're just overloaded, and it's a new item that they haven't really dealt with. So I think the computer systems and everything else is just kind of probably still not completely finalized yet. So it's going to probably be a while. So the sooner you get your forms submitted, the better your result will be. So with that, enjoy your summer. So now we're past the Memorial Day weekend, so we're truly in summer here, and I can tell it's hot outside. And, so enjoy your first full weekend of summer, and maybe have some of those Russian soft drinks we talked about earlier. And we'll see you next week.